boyfriend cheats on me with my step sibling, so I get him kicked out and destroy his relationship with his parents. Hello Reddit people. I've been wanting to post my story on here for absolutely ages, but I just never got around to doing it, so then I figured, since I have a Reddit account now, I might as well post it. When I was around 17 I started dating a guy, 19, I'll call him Jake for the sake of this post. Also age of consent where I live is 16, so nothing illegal happening here. We got on well, spent a lot of time together, and cared for each other a lot. We even started talking about living together once we both moved out. We were a perfectly happy couple, or so I thought. You see, after we'd been dating for a few months, something in Jake changed. He was getting a lot more distant. Whenever he was with me, he'd be checking his phone constantly. We stopped spending as much time together, and he started to get really funny about public affection. Regarding things like hand holding and stuff, he also seemed to start caring less and less about my feelings. I used to have a bit of a thing for humiliation in the bedroom. Nothing too far, and we'd spoken about what Jake should and shouldn't say, but he started to get more and more degrading. He'd tell me how no one would ever love me, and would pick on my insecurities. I actually broke down crying a few times when this happened. To give him a bit of credit, the first few times he did stop everything he was doing and apologize/cuddle with me until I felt better, but eventually that stopped too, and he just began rolling his eyes and telling me to grow up. He was like a completely different person. The insults started to seep into our everyday life. He'd pick on my appearance a lot, bring up my family. I was dealing with a lot of family issues at the time. Bring up the fact that I slept around before we started dating, a sort of rebellion caused by the family issues, etc. If got upset by it, he'd just leave the room and let me cry by myself. I started to feel like it was my fault. Our relationship was falling apart. Maybe I just wasn't good enough for him. I knew deep down that he was cheating on me, and that was confirmed when I got a message from a guy, David, on Facebook telling me that he'd been sleeping with Jake. He apologized profusely and told me that he broke things off with Jake as soon as he found out he had a boyfriend. I couldn't be mad at David. It wasn't his fault. We spoke for hours and I reassured David that it wasn't his fault and that he'd done nothing wrong. David also helped me to stop making excuses for Jake's attitude and the way he'd been acting. He was a godsend. The thing that truly broke me happened not too long after the cheating was discovered. We'd been arguing a hell of a lot more. Then he decided to do something absolutely unforgivable. You see, I had a strained relationship with my father for years. He'd cheat on my mother constantly, and eventually he settled down and had kids with a girl he'd been seeing behind her back. He did try to have some sort of relationship with me till I was about 13 over 14ish, and then decided that he didn't love me as much as his other kids, and we stopped any and all contact. It broke me and it still hurts to think about to this day. Anyway, Jake went out of his way to find one of my step siblings online and slept with them. He bragged about it the next day, and my step sibling actually posted online about what had happened, and I received a bunch of messages from their friends telling me how I had deserved it. This was probably the lowest point in my life, and I hated myself, partly for allowing it to happen, and partly because I had started to believe what they were saying. My only solace during this time was David. I didn't want to burden my friends with my problems, and David was one of the only people who knew firsthand what Jake was like. We spoke for a few weeks and eventually talk turned to revenge. I had tried calling things off a couple of months prior due to Jake's awful behavior, but he started with the apologies and telling me he didn't mean it. He'd never do it again. He even spoke to some of my family members who, unknowingly, pressured me to get back together with him. As we were such a sweet couple, I hadn't wanted to tell them the real reason that we'd broken up, so I kept the details pretty vague, though I'm pretty sure some of them had seen my step siblings post and knew why I didn't want to be with him. After weeks of talking and planning, I had finally had enough and decided to do something about it. My father wasn't exactly a rich man, but he worked a pretty well-paying job and earned enough money to live fairly comfortably. He had begun spreading rumors around when I was younger, during a custody battle with my mother, that he had set up a trust fund for me and that there was enough money there to get me set up in my own place when I was 18, plus a bit extra. I knew that this was absolute bullshit. He tried to get out of paying child support all the time. Of course he'd never set up a trust fund for me. However, Jake didn't We'd never spoken about it a lot, but he'd heard the rumors and I'd just always say what I told you folks. My father was an appalling parent who grudged paying my mother child support, so why the hell would he set up a trust fund? But Jake wouldn't listen. He even did his own research into the type of job my father worked and came up with an estimate of how much he thought my father was earning, though, to his credit, he did drop the subject whenever I asked him to, for a while anyways. I decided to use this to my advantage. Jake and I were still dating, though I avoided him at any chance I got, until one night where I sat him down and told him that since I'd be turning 18 in a couple of weeks, I'd started thinking about us getting our own place with the trust fund my father had set up for me. He immediately cheered up at this, and honestly I think that night was the first time in months that he'd said anything nice to me. When we weren't in public or with friends/family, this very nearly made me want to call the whole thing off, but I spoke with David later that night and he reminded me that Jake would go back to his usual degrading attitude in no time. We started looking at flats, though Jake was kind enough to let me have the final say and handle the paperwork, because how could he possibly go out and cheat on me if he had to sort out the paperwork for a flat? I was a little surprised by this, to be very honest, as I'd always thought that he'd want his name on the paperwork and everything, so I couldn't kick him out, but by this point he'd slept with my step-sibling, degraded me, smashed my self-confidence to pieces, and cheated on me regularly. I think by now he thought that I wouldn't kick him out, no matter what he did. Anyways, I started taking up extra shifts at work to try and save enough money to actually move out, not with Jake though. Oh no, I was moving in with my friend Emma. We had both been thinking about moving out for a while anyways, and though why not just be roommates, we found a cute little 1-bedroom flat that was close to our college and work and started getting stuff sorted to move in. I also didn't want to bring any trouble to my mother's door if Jake started kicking up a fuss. Emma had no issues with clawing the face off him if need be, and told me not to worry about him coming to our front door. Then came the next part of the plan. I waited till a week or so before Jake and I were supposedly moving into our own flat and stole his phone for a few minutes. He'd stopped caring about leaving his phone unattended and would sometimes flat out brag about how lucky he was to be able to sleep with whoever he wanted and come home to a little bitch who'd make him dinner. So that day, when he went for a shower, he wasn't all too bothered about taking his phone with him. Perfect. I went onto his phone, deleted my number from his contacts, and changed the name of his MM's contact as mine. Pleased, I went to the kitchen, smashed one of the plates. It was my mother's, but it was a cheap one from a local shop and I did replace it as soon as possible. I left for work once everything was done. My mother had left for work a couple hours prior, so she was safe. I just needed a reason for him to get pissed off, and oh boy, did he get pissed off. His first reaction was to text me, calling me all the disgusting names under the sun, except it wasn't me he texted. It was his mum. I'd texted her in advance and told her that I hoped she'd forgive me, but she had to see what her son was really like. She'd never tried to defend him as much as she just hadn't known quite how bad his behavior was. She'd actually called him out a couple of times where he'd slipped up and been harsh with me when she was there. She went apeshit. I never found out exactly how their argument went, as she phoned him to scream at him and call him out for his shitty behavior. Finally, seeing how horrible her son was, it didn't help that she'd been sent screenshots of some of the times where he'd admitted to cheating. She was absolutely disgusted by her son's behavior and phoned me to apologize on Jake's behalf. It wasn't her fault though. He's old enough to know how to act like a damn adult. He wound up telling his mum essentially that her opinion didn't matter as he'd be moving in with me anyways. Needless to say, when he called me on Facebook after I deleted my number from his phone, I took some satisfaction in telling him that we weren't moving in together, that the trust fund wasn't real. I'd already told him that in the past. He just refused to listen, and that I'd moved in with him. I was called all the sluts and whores under the sun. His voice sort of turned into white noise after a while. I told him we were over and hung up, blocked him on everything. He had to run back to his mum and dad, his tail between his legs, and they took him back for a little while, though after a bit, the arguments became too much and his parents kicked him out. He stayed with a couple of friends for a few months before he managed to get his own place. His parents, especially his mother, have not been the same with him since I still talk to his mum on occasion. Lastly, David and I took the liberty of sending screenshots of Jake's abuse to as many of the people he'd been hooking up with as possible. A couple of sleepless nights were spent trying to track people down on Facebook. Part of it was to get back at Jake, but most of it was just to make sure that none of them got roped into a full-on relationship with him and had to deal with all the crap I'd gone through. So there it is, my little story of pro-revenge. I know this is really long, so there's a TLDR below. I wasn't ever planning on posting my story, but I was scrolling through Facebook the other day, and one of Jake's new accounts popped up on the People You May Now section. After talking with Emma about it, she suggested posting it here. I hope it fits in this subreddit. By TLDR. Boyfriend turns into a cheating asshole and winds up sleeping with one of my step siblings to hurt me. Knowing that I do not have contact with my father, I play up to the rumor that my dad has set up a trust fund. He hadn't. Trick him into thinking we can move in together and into ruining his relationship with his parents. He winds up getting kicked out. I move in with a friend. Also send screenshots of his abusive texts to all of his partners to ensure they don't make the mistake of dating him. Edit. Okay, first, thank you for all the kind comments and awards. I'm doing a lot better now. This happened a few years ago, and I haven't had to deal with Jake since. Secondly, I saw a few people getting confused about the plate part, thinking I was still in the house. So why would he text me? I had left for work by the time he'd gotten out of the shower, so he couldn't yell at me. Also, my mother was at work, so I didn't leave her with him. Don't worry, I edited this in my original post just to clear things up for people, just in case by some chance they don't see the edit. I hope this helps. The part where you change his mom's contact to your name is a pro move. Worth a read. Really glad you got out of that abusive relationship. It definitely would have kept getting worse and worse if David hadn't stepped in to help you. Thank you. And yeah, David was an absolute godsend. Honestly, if it weren't for him and Emma, I might still be stuck with Jake. David and Emma helped you be strong. You would have left Jake, but maybe not as soon as you did. Fantastic. The dick would utterly deserve that. You're better off free of that cockwimble. Good for you for handling it so perfectly. Thank you. It took a long time to realize he deserved it. Also, can I just say, cockwimble is now my new favorite word. You did well. It can be difficult when you're so entrenched in a relationship that you don't want to admit that the person you love is a complete scene twaffle. I'm glad you had David. It's a brilliant word, isn't it? But with great power comes great responsibility. Use it wisely. Beautiful. That is absolutely stunning. Thank you for sharing it. He deserves every little bit of it for treating you so badly. I'm glad you're out. Hope you're doing okay now. Thank you so much. I'm doing much better now. Emma and I are still living together, so she helps me out if I have a bad day. I'm glad you have her and that she has your back. I was impressed with the way you dealt with it all, and changing your number to his mum's was inspired. Exclamation mark. Fuck, you're awesome. He brought it onto himself by acting so horrible. Thanks. I actually felt really guilty about it for a while, but I'm glad to see other people think he deserved it. For what it's worth, I don't think you should feel guilty over besting a prize turd like Jake. Swapping his mom's phone number in was a total power move. I hope you are well. Thank you. Doing a lot better now. Also, for all the sleeping around he did, please get tested if you haven't already. Oh, don't worry. This happened a few years back. I got myself tested a couple times while I was with him, and after we broke up. All safe. This is one of my favorite revenge stories. Smart, patient, calculated, genius. I'm so happy you got out of that relationship. Fuck that guy. The only term I feel is appropriate for these kinds of people is douchebag McFuckface. I'm glad you're rid of him, and it sounds like you're kicking ass already. That is a very appropriate term, Heather, and thank you so much. Step sibling or half sibling, either way, your ex is complete trash, and so is your sibling. Good job on the revenge. Step sibling I think is more accurate. The girl my dad left mum for had 2 kids from another relationship. He adopted them. It was one of them Jake contacted. Thank you. Wow, your dad sucks. I'm confused. What is your gender? I assumed you were female until you said he cheated on you with a guy. Are you male? Or is Jake B? What gender is your step sibling? Not that any of it matters, just to help me flesh out the story in my head. It's just a little confusing when the genders and sexuality is vague. Bisexual male here. Jake is also B, though he once said that he's a 50/50 split when it comes to guys and girls, whereas I'm more likely to be attracted to men or masculine presenting people, like a 70/30 split. My step sibling was female. Hope this cleared up the confusion. This informs the story a little more in my opinion. The more I read, the more I became suspicious that Jake didn't really care about the actual sex or the gender of those he was having sex with. He seemed to just want to hurt people, and using sex was just his weapon of choice. Douchebag. The amount of editorializing is off the charts. A dom will call you names during the scene, but will always cuddle and give aftercare. An abuser will stop giving aftercare as soon as they think they can. Know the difference between a dom and an abuser. A dom will abuse you only if you both like it, or maybe if you like it and it isn't too bad for the dom. I learned this distinction the hard way. I no longer have a thing for humiliation, but a couple doms I've been with were exactly like you said. Jake would just leave me to cry cause it annoyed him. Bruh, I laughed at the part where you said Yao changed his mom's contact #w his mom's name XD. That is some good revenge shit right there. This is so horrible. I'm so sorry you went through that. Thank God you got out. Also, your step sibling is disgusting. To not only A, sleep with your BF, but then to post on Facebook and then B, have them and their friends say you deserved it. Disgusting. Again, I'm so terribly sorry this happened to you. So that day, when he went for a shower, he wasn't all too bothered about taking his phone with him. Perfect. I went onto his phone, deleted my number from his contacts, and changed the name of his MM's contact as mine. Pleased. I went to the kitchen, smashed one of the plates. It was my mother's, but it was a cheap one from a local shop and I did replace it as soon as possible. I just needed a reason for him to get pissed off. And oh boy, did he get pissed off. His first reaction was to text me, calling me all the disgusting names under the sun. Except it wasn't me he texted. It was his mum. Why did he text you when you were presumably near each other? Sorry, I'm a bloody idiot. I thought I'd written it in. I was heading into work. I did this before I left. When he got out of the shower I'd already left. Sorry for the confusion. Okay, I guess. That just confused me so much. Sounds like he needs and deserves more revenge in my opinion. Hope you're doing better after him. Exclamation mark. Thank you so much. Been doing a hell of a lot better without him. What happened after the people found out? Most of them thanked us for letting them know how awful he was and cut contact. Some didn't get back to us, and a couple didn't really care that much and still hooked up with him, which is completely their choice. Title reads like porn synopsis. Haha, yeah, I wrote this when I was running on a couple hours sleep. Probably should've checked the title. Okay, that phone number contact change trick is ducking brilliant. I'm writing that down. Absolutely fantastic revenge. That jerk deserves nothing but your absolute happiness. I really don't want to see this disappear, so if the mods take it down, they do it often. Try reposting to r/justice is served. Warning others about not going near him is very sweet of you. Who knows how many people he would have leeched off of after moving on. This is a cool story and all, but pleased. I went to the kitchen, smashed one of the plates. It was my mother's, but it was a cheap one from a local shop and I did replace it as soon as possible. I just needed a reason for him to get pissed off. And oh boy, did he get pissed off. His first reaction was to text me, calling me all the disgusting names under the sun. This part makes almost no sense. It reads as if you took his phone while he was in the shower, purposefully smashed a plate while he was in the shower, after the shower, closed bracket comma, and his first reaction, while in the same house, is to text you, not yell at you. Did he hear the smash? Or did he find the pieces? Either way, wouldn't he only realize exactly what had happened when he sees the smashed plate? Where were you at this moment? Logically, the only thing that would make sense is if you smashed the plate and then left without saying anything, causing him to text you. But that itself would be unwise. Leaving your boyfriend alone in your mother's house at the exact moment you uproot his life. And if it is that logical possibility, that isn't what you conveyed with your writing. Do you have an explanation for this? Yeah, sorry about that. I wrote this when I was running on barely any sleep, so some parts get a bit confusing. He was in the shower when I did the phone trick and smashed the plate. I doubt he heard it. I can barely hear anything when I'm showering cause of the running water. I left to head to work straight after. My mum wasn't home as she used to leave for work pretty early in the morning. Think around 5 am-ish, whilst I left around 8-9 Sam. He wouldn't have risked damaging anything in the house. That I 100% knew. Hope this cleared some things up. I know I wrote it a bit confusing, so I'm sorry about that. Step bro. Is that you? Oh, I really should've checked the title XD. Way too long. None of this happened outside of whatever Pornhub video you used as inspiration for this creative writing project. That's 100% your opinion that you're entitled to. I know not everyone's gonna believe my story, but that's fine. Wow, this is glorious. Bravo. Utterly brilliant. He deserved every bit of it and more. Nicely done. I hope David is doing good as well. Oh. This is amazing and hilarious. Well done. There are so many awful people like him out there, but not many are willing to put them in their place. Good job. Way to go, dude. You're worth more than that. And I'm glad you finally realized it. Totally satisfying reading that. Some true pre-revenge. Well done. I hope the next person you date is someone who treats you properly. Never make excuses for anybody. If they suck, they suck. Move on no matter how much you have invested on them. Good luck. As they say, hell hath no fury. Good for you. You sound like a really nice person. I hope you've found someone better. Very well done. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. So good. I remember reading your rater posts. Hopefully things are going better for you now. Keep surrounding yourself with good people who support you. Thank you so much. Things are going a lot better now. Emma and I are in our new flat with our new roommate. Been having horror movie marathons a lot more, haha. Hey, just wanted to say I hope you have recovered or are recovering well from this relationship and have a support network around you. It's an awesome story and it makes me smile so much, but you went through a lot and deserve nothing but the best. You're a genius and he got what he deserved. Good job. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.